There were recently not one, but two team tournaments featuring DPP Ubers, and that just sent me over the moon. DPP Ubers, as you may know if you have watched my videos before, but even if you don't know, I will tell you now, DPP Ubers is the greatest metagame to ever exist. It is the Ryan Gosling of Pokemon. So, to commemorate this immense opportunity and privilege to get to see tournament play in this most wonderful, beautiful, perfect metagame, I decided to go over the playoffs battles from those tournaments because at this point, the players who are still remaining, they are not just going through the motions. They are involved, they are invested, they're going to be bringing their best because the win is close at hand. So they're going to be bringing their best teams, bringing something unexpected even, and they're going to be playing their hearts out. And I figured I would take advantage of this by making this video. So without further ado, we will start with one of the battles from the semifinals of the DPP Premier League. Steel Skitty, the Janine avatar there, and against FC. Both are renowned Ubers players, and both have shown a vested interest in DPP in particular. So I am really happy with this matchup, and I think you will be too. So we see Darkrai versus Giratina. Now, Giratina runs from Darkrai, obviously, but I'll give a little bit of context as to why there was a Giratina leading. Giratina with its powerful Draco Meteor and Shadow Sneak, both boosted by Grisius Orb, although the Draco is really only relevant for bulky Deoxys speed. But still, with its powerful attacks and its strong priority, then its goal is to limit hazard leads to one layer, the fast hazard leads. So Deoxys speed, Deoxys attack, Frostlass, Quillfish, Cloyster. So it's a great lead against a lot, and it of course has to run from Darkrai, which often runs a Choice Scarf lead set. Not necessarily, but generally that's the assumption you make, because with a Scarf it outruns even Deoxys speed, and it Dark Voids it, thereby preventing any early hazards. So both of these leads are meant to stop Dio speed in some way, which is what the DPP lead metagame is all about. So but of course Darkrai has the edge over Giratina, so Giratina has to run. Of course, if you have made a good team, then you will be ready to switch into Darkrai, especially on the first turn, especially when your lead loses to it. So in comes Palkia, and that signals Sleep Talk of some kind. Likely going to be Choice Scarf Sleep Talk, because that's where it's most easily slotted, and it's not likely you're going to see some bulk up Rest Talk Palkia. As cool as that set is, I think, then it can be safely assumed that it's going to be Scarf, maybe Specs, but probably Scarf. So, with the Darkrai likely being Scarfed, we're going to see a switch here, and from Steel or Jackie, I'm going to refer to her as both, then we can see either a Sleep Talk, trying to fire off an attack, see what the switch-in is, maybe get some early damage, or double switching to her own Stealth Rocker to match the opposing rocks that FC is trying to go for. Because when you lead off with Darkrai and you get that guaranteed sleep, what do you do with it? You don't just start hitting with dragons yet. I mean, as great as that is, then you want to set the stage first. You want to get up your hazards. Just Stealth Rock is fine. Really pushes that Draco Meteor over the edge. So it's likely something like a Dialga or a Groudon is coming in for FC, or a mid-game Deoxys speed is also not unheard of, although uncommon. So the response for Jackie is going to be something that can either get up rocks or something that can at least deny rocks from Dialga or Groudon, so that she does not fall behind. I will also mention that Giratina Origin, Darkrai lead signifies offense, and Giratina Origin lead can signify offense as well. Or rather, let me rephrase that. Giratina Origin can be placed on offense teams, but it often signifies stall. And it's kind of funny how that works exactly, because half the reason Giratina Origin leads off on stall teams is to disguise the stall team. Because you don't think, oh, Giratina Origin lead, stall. The other reason is that Stall, generally with its bulkier Pokemon, doesn't have things that are really geared towards the lead metagame. But they often wind up using Giratina Origin. And Giratina Origin naturally fits into the lead metagame nicely, so they just kind of throw it in as their de facto lead so they don't fall too far behind immediately against hyper offense stuff. So, and with that logic in mind, then suddenly Giratina Origin, it's not a giveaway for a Stally team or anything, but people start thinking, alright, Giratina Origin lead might be in for some stall. So, with stall, then it's defensive teams, balanced, bulky stuff, however you want to phrase it. It can be a same difference thing a lot of the time. Because even stall teams often have, fast offensive Pokemon. I mean, Scarf Palkia is common on stall, Latias common on stall. Giratina Origin is not exactly a walling Pokemon, so the differences can be nebulos, as Michael Scott would say. Anyway, with those kinds of teams, then it's very important to not get just run over right from the start. And that means that giving Dialga, which is the most common Stealth Rocker by far, giving Dialga a free Stealth Rock while you cannot match that in return is not a good idea. So, FC goes to Groudon, there's those early rocks, Sun comes up, and Jackie goes to Heatran. Excuse me, I just had dinner, and I'm so excited about this battle that my dinner's trying to jump out of me. Much like Heatran has to jump out of the way of this Groudon's Earthquake, am I right? Anyway, Heatran in Ubers has a couple of sets that it can run. The main one is just a stall breaker. It gets up it takes advantage of hazards that have already been set up, and with Lava Plume, boosted by Sun, and if Kyogre wants to switch, it has to take spikes and get roared out, toxic. Just a very annoying Pokemon. Somewhat similar to how it plays in OU, except it uses Dragon Pulse a lot more for the Lotties and Rayquaza and stuff, and Garchomp too. So. And Palkia as well. So, yeah, that's Heatran for you. But it can also run Stealth Rock on such a set. It finds opportunities because it resists both. It resists Dragon, and it's great against all the steals that are used because they resist Dragon, like Jirachi. So, it can be used as a Stealth Rocker. And Scarf technically exists. Steel actually used it, or one of her teammates used it at her behest before this game, I think. So it's definitely possible to run Scarftran in Ubers because, Scarftran is really, really nasty in permanent sun, so that overheat just melts a lot. So, and, fast explosion is always good. So a lot of possibilities here. Although I have a feeling that given the likelihood of a Dialga switch, the switch in being Heatran here might be, okay, if Dialga comes in, I'm going to go to Heatran and get up rocks. So Groudon was less expected. I mean, it's not unexpected, but Dialga is so common that you want to account for that. So Heatran's got to get out of the way here, and Jackie goes back to Giratina Origin, and FC goes for EQ. So one might think, that wasn't that kind of hasty, and I kind of have to agree. Heatran is a really, really important Pokemon, and as great as the temptation to get up rocks may be, especially if you're facing a really fast-paced team and think you're not going to get another chance, I mean, the whole reason Heatran is used is because it gets so many opportunities. So if it is your Stealth Rock, you don't have to risk the game and be impatient. So I think FC should have just gotten up the rocks, because at worst, Heatran also gets up rocks. It's not going to stay in just to go for a Lava Plume. That's just not worth it. And, staying in to begin with is generally not worth it. So getting up rocks definitely would have been better there. So Jackie goes for a Will-O-Wisp. Giratina runs this even on more offensive sets. Draco, Sneak, Will-O-Wisp, and then a filler like Roar, EQ, Thunder, HP Fire, depending on your weather. That kind of stuff. Well, it can also run things like Dragon Claw over Draco Meteor if you don't want to go split EVs, for example. So there's that possibility, and Will-O-Wisp also Will-O-Wisp and the Heatran signifies, all right, we're definitely seeing some spikes here. This is a bulky, semi-stall, however you want to phrase it, kind of team. So, and the Wisp goes hand in hand with that, spreading more passive damage. So Groudon goes for a T-Wave. Now that's not going to really affect Groudon's ability to deal with Giratina, but it definitely can be relevant later, depending on FC's brand of offense. I mean, Darkrai into Groudon can definitely still be some sort of like stally Sun team that uses Scarf Darkrai for early momentum and late game cleaning. So I mean, it wouldn't be completely unsurprising to see a Fortress or something there. But if it was a Dialga, then it would be a lot more likely that it was a purely hyper offensive team. But yeah, the Groudon having T-Wave definitely might also signify that FC's team struggles to switch into something like Latios and really needs it crippled. So there is that. It's unlikely we see a Latios from Jackie's end since there's already the Palkia and a lot of slots to still fill. So Groudon gets up rocks, and Giratina just goes for a Grisius War boosted Outrage, which does a lot to that Groudon. 50, which even with an attack invested Giratina, that's a lot of damage. So that is definitely Spadef invested. And so the Groudon is burned and at low health. But since Jackie's also running Sun, it's not about the Weather War as much as just having one less Pokemon to deal with. But it's also gotten up rocks and paralyzed Giratina. And there's Fortress. So that's one of the many cool things about, Darkrai and Giratina leads. They might have you thinking one thing, but then they can also surprise you. So we saw both cases of those phenomena in this game. So with the paralyzed Giratina, even if it has, I gotta say, I do not expect Will-O-Wisp and HP Fire. I've never seen that. I think that would be redundant, extremely. So Fortress is, Fortress often finds it hard to spin, and even with paralyzed Giratina, then your paybacks are not doing too much on the switch, and then they get weaker afterwards, and you got to worry about Will-O-Wisp. So FC is making use of Fortress in an interesting way here. Because generally you see Fortress is switching in when hazards are already up, and it's like, I got this whole reactive, do I want to spin or get up my own kind of thing. But here, FC has made great use of Darkrai and Groudon's early game synergy, especially because Groudon also scares off a lot of early game Dialgas. So, players that go to their own Dialga to try to get up rocks, they're going to run from a lot of Groudon, and therefore you get the rocks advantage. And then you get Fori and get down hazards before your opponent has any. So you are exerting a lot more pressure that way. And so you might think, well, why use Fori if you're not going to spin with it? And why not just use Scarm? Good question. But the main thing is that Fortress also learns Toxic Spikes. So now there is going to be the double switch to Heatran. And I got to say, I was a little surprised by this. I guess there was... I really thought that it might be better if FC just kind of goes all out and just lays down the hazards and then abuses them to the fullest, as opposed to trying to pivot around everything. Especially, and if the double switch was necessary, then I don't think it should have been to Darkrai, because the switch into Fortress is 100,000% going to be Heatran there, given that it's likely to be the rocker. And I think it just would have been better to get the spike down no matter what. So Heatran can be incredibly irritating to switch into for a lot of Sun teams, and even Darkrai's Focus Blast, especially if it's Scarf, is not going to be doing too much. But that was actually a really nice move, because that was FC's intention. That might signify he really cannot handle Heatran. A lot of Sun teams really struggle with it, and so he decided, you know what, if it's gonna get Stealth Rock up, I'm gonna trick it. So that was a great move. I guess he really can't handle switching into those sunny Lava Plumes. I get it, it's tough. Groudon started using Lava Plume more too. Even though it's not about the power as much as just the residual and the coverage, and it still hits pretty hard in Sun. And so, yeah, Heatran is going to have its Heatran abilities neutered now, so now it can't take so many hits, not healing with lefties. But so that's and now the really nasty thing about this Darkrai is not only that it has leftovers so it can offset Stealth Rock chip, but that Jackie either has to go to a sleeping Palkia, which is not going to be a great answer, or has to reveal another Pokemon. And that's probably not going to love switching into Darkrai either, because Darkrai has a very free Dark Pulse here. And if Palkia switches in, not only does it start at 75 from rocks before it even takes the Dark Pulse, but then it takes even more damage because of Bad Dreams. So here comes Palk. And there is the Dark Pulse doing a ton of damage to a KOing even without Bad Dreams, although that really seals the deal. And Sleep Talk is kind of telegraphed here, but even you have to roll Draco Meteor if the Scarf Palkia even runs Draco Meteor. Many don't. And Spatial Rend won't KO from full. And Sunny Fire Blast is going to hurt, but not going to KO. And getting Palkia out of the way is nasty because that means a sleep later. So Darkrai, and of course, if it runs Thunder, as Scarf Palkia often does, because it is tasked with switching into Kyogre, then it's probably not going to hit. So Darkrai was safe to stay in and go for a Pulse there. So now Jackie goes to her own Darkrai, and that either means insane desperation or the more likely option of own Scarfry and chasing FCs out. So the nice thing here is that Jackie's going to be able to kind of even the score a little with Dark Void, and well, actually no, I take that back. That was a little hasty of me. Focus Blast was the right move, because if the burned Groudon comes in to block a Scarf Dark Void as intended, then it would not be able to, then Jackie's Scarfry would be forced out and would accomplish nothing. And with Focus Blast, then probably even up the score, since Groudon was a very safe sacrifice there. Unless there was a Sleep Talker of some kind ready to switch in. But Focus Blast hits most Sleep Talkers nicely anyway, so here comes Mewtwo, and that's a great move, because if it's a Scarf Darkrai, it's locked into Focus and it has to switch out. And if it's not a Scarf Darkrai, then Mewtwo just outspeeds it and threatens with Aura Sphere. So, and Mewtwo threatens this team really hard, because it threatens every team really hard. These teams often rely on, chip damage and Shadow Sneak Giratina O to keep it in check. So, Jackie just goes right to Heatran, throwing it right into the path of Aura Sphere, and that winds up being a great move, because FC expects Giratina to come in. And, Giratina is a great switch in here, because it lives Life Orb Ice Beam even after Rocks, because Mewtwo is strong, but Giratina is just a beast. And it winds up Ice Beaming into Heatran and doing nothing. And now FC's kind of faced with a tough task of, do I Aura Sphere and probably lose Mewtwo to just take out a Scarfed Heatran? Or a Scarfed 3 Heatran, not the threatening kind, a Scarfed specially defensive Heatran? Or do I try to nail Giratina again? And Jackie pivots, and that was a great move, because even if Ice Beam does go off, then there's still the Shadow Sneak afterwards. And that's, combined with the extra Life Orb hit based on the Heatran thing, then it was worth it, because now at least Mewtwo is going down, and then it's going to be more of a Darkrai war, but with Jackie's Darkrai still having a Scarf, assumedly, then it's a lot better. So Aura goes off, nothing, so 2 Ice Beams are taken. Shadow Sneak does a lot, but Mewtwo, maybe, yeah, I think it was just a very specially defensive Groudon, because 53 is kind of low if my head calc is correct. But then again, that also might just signify that on a bulky team like this, that the Giratina is more about the bulk than just all-out attacking. And of course, it's not unlikely that some speed EVs are in there as well. So, definitely would be really, really tough to deal with something like Mewtwo if the spikes were up. So I gotta say, I still think spikes going down might have been nice, especially because it really locks in the switching options for Jackie later if the what's it called? If the FC's Darkrai comes in, gets a sleep off, but both players have that option. So both players kind of running the same style, which is pretty cool. So Mewtwo goes down. I don't know. I guess FC preferred to revenge kill the Mewtwo with Darkrai after. Well, there's a couple things there. I thought Mewtwo could be sacrificed there, but it just makes more sense to go to Darkrai simply because Jackie losing. I know that Mewtwo had 2 Life Orb hits afterwards, actually. And it just made sense. It didn't make sense for Jackie to needlessly risk Giratina by trying to outrage the Darkrai. As cool as that would be, then I think it was probably safer to just sneak. And if Darkrai does come in, fine, and just fodder it off, and then go to your own Darkrai after. Because if this comes down to Darkrai versus Darkrai, then the Scarfry is going to win. So I think FC should have taken advantage of that. I mean, he's in a kind of a not so great spot, and every sacrifice he can get is going to help him. And yeah, I think Darkrai should have come in there, but that's what happens. Now Heatran comes in, and it's not going to beat the Darkrai because it's even with the Scarf, the specially defensive Heatran does not run anywhere near enough speed to outrun 383 at +1. So FC is just going to Dark Void it, and then either way, something is getting KO, whether it's Heatran that gets foddered off or it's Giratina that gets foddered off, but The good news is that FC is going to come out ahead. So the bad news is that Dark Void misses, and Lava Plume at least doesn't burn. Dark Void misses again, so that really bites, and FC falls behind. This is going to be really tough to come back from, especially because there's Latias last, so another Pokemon that doesn't love a Scarfry. And there's a Draco miss on a Fori, so team style really similar. You got the bulky Hazard core with Heatran and Fori and Groudon and Fori, and the last is almost certainly a Groudon on Jackie's end. And then you got the Scarf Darkrais. I mean, one leads off, one doesn't, but you got the fast cleanup in general. Here you got the Latias and the Mewtwo, and the last likely a Giratina origin for FC as well, but that's also not great because that means Darkrai still a problem. So most Ubers Fori just run Payback, and Toxic Protect is also seeing some good usage, but Latias is likely going to lose to it in some capacity. But what Jackie does is Explosion, and that's rare. I mean, a good move for sure, but definitely not fit on most Fori sets, so that was unexpected. But most Fori are probably going to beat a Latias without HP Fire anyway. So Draco Meteor Calm Mind is a very cool set, but doesn't get used to its full potential here. So in comes a Lucario, which unexpected, because Giratina Origin makes more sense. But if you have enough offensive pressure, especially with the sleep and the trick mania that Darkrai can cause, then you can get away without spinning if you'd like. And I gotta be honest, I'm not the one who made the team. I wasn't there for it, so this is just my speculation. But I was not expecting Lucario because it's not really a Toxic Spike abuser. I mean, Toxic Spikes chips away at things like Groudon, yeah, and Scarf Chomp, but I don't know, maybe Scarf would be better. Who knows? That's just my off-the-top opinion, though. Anyway, so Darkrai still has to hit some moves. Big if, of course, but Lucario comes in trying to finish off Heatran or Giratina O, not taking Stealth Rock, and there's Dark Void, goes off. And in comes Heatran, and Fori stays asleep. No double switching back to Lucario, but at this point in the game looks fairly over, barring some insane nonsense. So there's CC, down goes Heatran. In comes Groudon. Yes, it does. And it gets crit. Uh-oh. Now we're in trouble because Giratina dies to rocks. So, of course, that was ridiculous. I mean, so was the double Dark Void miss, so that really bites. But, yeah, so here's the Darkrai, which has to come in and hit a Dark Void or a Focus Blast, and Extreme Speed can crit and can dodge, so... it needed the Groudon crit prior, but, call it even? Maybe, who knows. Still dodgy odds. Extreme Speed goes off, not quite doing the job. Dark Void goes down, and Lucario stays in, and Focus Blast. So that was not a Scarf Darkrai. So I'm really wondering, it could be a lot of items. It could be Choppel, so it could have gotten the edge on the opposing Darkrai that way. Very possible. It's also very possible that it was just Lum. So earlier, that Darkrai into Darkrai thing was a bluff, and it was an excellent bluff. You don't see a ton of those executed efficiently. So that was very cool the way that was played. It also makes sense that it's not Double Scarf alongside Palkia, but the confidence with which that was sent in, because it could have been Groudon instead. Then that was nicely done. So the hacks marred this one, but. We're just going to leave it at that. So, well done to both, and that's the game. So we're going now to the second semifinals game of the DPP Premier League semis. So, I think I just said semis twice, but it's okay. It's Cole 49, otherwise known as Kami-sama, number 49, versus Ziel. Cole 49 is not really known for his DPP Ubers prowess, but he's a great player, as he's proved in many tiers. And Ziel is more of an Ubers main who likes DPP as well. So, we're going to get into this, and what do we see? Some Uber Pokemon? Not quite. We see two Tentacruels, and both are going to T-Spike out of obligation. So, two Tentacruels, so we're going to see some T-Spike abusing fun. And what's interesting about that T-Spike is, oh, well, T-Spiking into other Tentacruel, maybe not going to really do anything, but theoretically, if you go to your Giratina now, then you will be able to force the opposing Tentacruel out, and then, because it won't be able to spin, and then you will maybe be able to hit something that will be forced to take a poison, like a Kyogre or something. Because not a lot of steals feel super safe about switching into Giratina Origin. I mean, unless you have a Bronzong, which is definitely feasible. A lot of Dialgas as well, but Giratina can mess those up, so maybe you can get something out of these T-Spikes against an opposing Tentacruel team. It depends on how both players want to do it. So instead, Cole takes this opportunity to go to Dialga, and Ziel is the one who goes to Giratina Origin. So that was nicely done on Cole's end, because if the Tenna stays in and goes for the spin, then he will be able to get up his... But actually, no, that makes no difference as opposed to switching into T-Spikes on the first turn. No. Well, that was good precisely because it takes advantage of the Giratina O thing that we just talked about. So, wow, Cole, really well done. So... And worst case, if Ziel does something similar, then Groudon can't come in here to set up Stealth Rock. So Dialga's Stealth Rock was nigh guaranteed there. So that was really nice. On that turn rather, not in the event that it switched into Rapid Spin. So Ziel tries the Giratina thing, and Cole has the one-up with Dialga, so chases it out, and in comes Blissey. So are we going to get, I assume we'll see rocks from Dialga, and instead we see a huge Draco Meteor doing 41 to Blissey. Specs Dialga is awesome. I am always really happy to see it. So now we go to Tentacruel to see those T-Spikes absorbed, and Blissey's going to be at 88. So all this amounted to was 12% chip on Blissey, because Tentacruel is coming back in for Ziel, and that's not going to change much. So I assume Cole could just T-Spike again here and go and try the same thing again. Maybe throw Giratina into the mix this time. But instead, Giratina comes in on Tentacruel, and while Giratina altered, or just regular Giratina, I guess I'll have to specify Giratina Origin for Ziel now. Giratina altered, well, stereotypically Will-O-Wisp, Restalk, Roar, super bulky stuff that lives +6 outrage from Rayquaza and other stupid stuff. Then it's, nowadays it became more in vogue to run these funky sets okay, well, Scarf is a lot of fun. I really love that one. But it's more popular to run things like Sub Protect, Calm Mind, or Sub Protect Will-O-Wisp. Pressure Stall, T-Spike Stall is just nasty. It's hard to get it going against this kind of team, though, because Blissey's going to be annoying. You're not going to get those T-Spikes down. And spreading the burn, if there is a burn, is not guaranteed. So it depends on what the Giratina wants to do. Does it want to start burning stuff? Because if it's Sub-Calm Mind, then it's going to set up all over Blissey and win. If it's Sub-Protect Wisp, it's not going to do much. And if there's a Sub-Calm Minder, then there's almost guaranteed to be some sort of Pokemon. You're not going to run Blissey and just automatically lose to Sub-Calm Minders. That's just stupid. Even if you're running Encore Quagsire, you're going to have something. So, there's Skarmory. See, there you go. If the Giratina wisps you, it wisps you. But at the very least, you'll get down spikes. Then there's the Wisp. So Skarmory's going to get down lots of spikes. It's not going to be easy for Tenna to spin them. Tenna spins on Deoxys speed. Tenna does not come in later in the game and threaten spins. So Skarmory's burned, and that's nice. But now Blissey has free reign. Rocks are going to go up soon. Tentacruel's going to come up and get T-Spikes. But the gist of this is that Cole is not pressuring with hazards yet, and without hazards, then he's not going to be threatening to break through. So what's the move here against the Giratina switch? There's the Icy Wind. Yeah, I mean that's about a 5-hit KO, and generally you're not going to be getting much done by trying to force your way through. Unless you have a T-Tar or something waiting in the back and you want that extra chip, then sure. Especially if Sand's already up, let's say. But most of the time you're going to not be getting too far, especially because now you have to deal with the task of switching into Giratina Origin with the Spike Up, and that's not fun. So here comes Bronzong. Good switch to most variants. Don't want to get Will-O-Wisp, of course, but, you know, generally gets the job done, at least initially, and at least it'll get up hazards, or get up rocks, so that's important. That's step one. The problem is if it's just rocks and T-Spikes, then it's going to be tough to get something done. Because rocks alone are not what is needed. And Ziel makes a great double switch there to Groudon, which takes advantage of the bulky kind of steel Pokemon, or not just necessarily steel, but generally the kind of bulky Pokemon that are commonly used to sponge Giratina Origin. And at the very least, he gives himself the opportunity to get up rocks. So both players are going to exchange rocks here almost certainly. I take that back because Groudon fires off an Overheat trying to deny rocks entirely, and it misses, and Cole goes for a Grass Knot. Now, we don't know what kind of... I think that Grass Knot was kind of short-sighted because I think rocks are priority, but maybe the Bronzong doesn't have rocks. I mean, GK Bronzong is definitely decent, but I don't know if that was a place to use it because the Groudon itself is not an immediate threat, and you got to get something going hazards-wise. So, Overheat also, if it's not guaranteed to kill a Spidef Bronzong, I don't believe, but it's been a while since I've done that calc, just because Groudon's special attack is not special. That's funny. But it's not anything enormous, so I could definitely see a Spidef Bronzong living it. But I'll check the calc just to be safe. Wow, really? Is that it? Okay, never mind. Did I put heat proof on this thing or something? Wow. I really, I guess Bronzong's a monster. But, yeah, I guess the immediate pressure was worth going for Ziel. So, yeah, that if like on a stallier team like this, then Scarf Dialga is often used as cleanup, and so I definitely get the logic behind that that Overheat, because if you get, you know, if you trade rocks and then you do damage, that's fine, and you know Ziel looks to have a huge advantage anyway. But if you Overheat first and get that huge damage on Zong, I mean, it's not like the 70s thing I was expecting, but then you get up rocks anyway, then your Dialga is sitting pretty. So. Because look at how it Dragon Pulses through everything. And on a team like this, then it's going to want a Kyogre as well. Just because it's such a great T-Spikes abuser. This is the kind of team that Soulwind used a lot this season of the Ubers Premier League. So there is a Kyogre coming in, fearing the Overheat. And yeah, so now the rocks go up. Good move. It's a choiced Kyogre. Or, okay, sorry, it's not a healing Kyogre. Because we're not going to be seeing Resto, Chesto, or anything like that. So, you know, Specs, Scarf, Calm Mind, Lum, those are the likely ones. And that is a big, not quite big enough. The Water Spout, if that was a Specs Water Spout, then Ziel would have the fear of Arceus stricken into him right now. Because Blissey would get destroyed, and, you know, then Dialga would likely just cleave through everything. You know, double Specs, Dialga and Kyogre is a lot of fun. Tough to make work, but a lot of fun. And potentially really nasty against a defensive team. So that would be really something. But Ziel made the right move. Well, number one, because I'm pretty sure there's probably not another super great... I mean, there's also the possibility of Latias there as the fast cleaner, because it's faster than a lot of things naturally, and it brings a lot of defensive utility, notably against Specs Kyogre. So it's possible, but that was a good move against Blissey. I mean, even something like a Calm Mind Lum set here could potentially start breaking the game open, but that's not what happens, and in comes the Zonger, and Blissey soft builds up unwaveringly. So here comes Groudon again, and I mean, hazard pressure, and this one's going to get tough. Because Stealth Rock goes up on Groudon switch, and now a double switch to Scarm on the Giratina as hazards are going up, and the window is closing really quickly, especially because... and I give a lot of credit to Ziel for that switch there, because this helps close the window more quickly. So, you know, get those spikes down, really wear everything down. Well, okay, Roost to use this thing defensively. I don't think that was super necessary, I guess, for the Calm Mind threat of Giratina. And you get more switches on Bronzong anyway. So now the obligatory spin block, you know, chipping away with Icy Wind. And Stealth Rock definitely helps, but that just, you know, I really think Rock should have gone up the turn before against Groudon. You know, that would have saved a turn earlier. as opposed to when Blissey comes in, then you have to go to the thing, the Bronzong, and then get up rocks. And let's check how much health Blissey was at. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you could have used an extra 12% on Blissey there, bring it down to 46. So yeah, there's the Roost, there's the Icy Wind. At least it's close to being spin blocked now, but there's going to be a faster Pokemon almost surely. And Tentacruel's on its last limbs, and now here comes the HP Fire. Great move, because it's not just that Tentacruel gets spin blocked, it's that with hazards down, Giratina Origin is a huge threat in its own right. And there's there it is. I mean, that's the game summarized. I mean, the window is closing more quickly every turn. I mean, Kyogre's coming in to try and weaken it. I mean, if it doesn't get Draco Meteor, and it doesn't, but I mean, where do we go from here? You can't Water Spout it anymore. It's not at full health, and Surf isn't getting anywhere. And it doesn't look like there's a lot of avenues besides some ridiculous double crits. Well, I mean, that was a turn to try and crit if any. But forcing the Soft Boil, then trying to weaken the Giratina Origin is definitely valid, but it still doesn't KO because it's just too weak. And now. Well, that was a good move from Cole, for sure. And by preserving the Tentacruel, the problem is Giratina is still going to get sacked one more time, and then there's going to be something faster, and then Tentacruel really can't come in to try and spin again. But the effort was good. Lugia is going to shrug off Shadow Sneak nicely, can Roost, and this is going to be either like some sort of sub-Roost or Calm Mind Roost Lugia. But either way, both it and Giratina, this team really, well, I'm not going to say it banks on not facing Skarmory, but Skarmory, which admittedly is rare. Blissey is not as common as it used to be. Specs Dialga will break through most Skarmory stuff fairly well, but the combination of T-Spikes, Skarmory, and Blissey is a lot. Because this team is definitely aiming to stall out a more offensive team with less in the way of longevity, with the combination with Giratina and Lugia. And then you have the fast cleanup option of Scarf Kyogre and the wall break and the defensive fallback of Bronzong. And I mean, it's a good team, but I think it definitely needs some tweaks, because otherwise something like the team Ziel brought is going to be really tough to deal with. So in comes the Skarm, even burned, it's going to shrug off Calm Minded Ice Beams pretty nicely, and it even threatens Lugia with Toxic, because Uber's Skarm runs Toxic quite a lot. So Tentacruel comes in, and not that it was a bad spot to pick, but Giratina's going to get sacked here, and then the Latios or the Scarf Dialga is going to come in. So to Cole's credit, he goes for the T-Spikes, but it's not going to make a difference, but at least he tried. So yeah, there's the Scarf Dialga to clean up, and down goes Tentacruel. Lugia's not going to get anything done. Specs Dialga, at least the good news is that here, well, actually it's not really good news. It's just the nice thing in theory here is that Blissey doesn't want to, actually no, Blissey can switch into Specs Draco Meteor with Poison. It did it earlier. Maybe not Poison and Rocks as comfortably, but it still can. It's just the Ziel got off to too good a start early on, considering the matchup for Cole to mount a comeback. Because you can see here he's trying to get the spin off, trying to get the T-Spikes down with Specs Dialga in before Tentacruel can come in to absorb them, all that kind of stuff. But this team just doesn't have enough tools, and Ziel is playing his advantage really well. So in comes Tentacruel, going to get sacked to the Specs. Oh, okay, misses. Not that it really matters. So not even going to attempt to spin, just getting up the T-Spikes of his own to really finish off Kyogre, I guess. Or no, sorry, Giratina. Yeah, Giratina. T-Spiking for Giratina. That was a really smart move, actually. That was a great move, in fact. Well, okay, maybe not necessary, because Giratina starting at less than 69% after all these hazards is still not going to break through a Dialga and Groudon, and so actually it's not even Calm Mind, so yeah, definitely not. But it was a good move to ensure there would be no nonsense. Even if Giratina switched in on that turn, then it was not likely to, which I guess it could have. Maybe he should have. Maybe that was the move. Since Skarmory is weak, try to get Giratina in here. Icy Wind isn't going to be breaking any subs, and maybe, just maybe, you can salvage something. I think that was it. You try to get Giratina in here where it can't really be hurt, and it can set up a sub, and just maybe it can get enough health to where it can substitute and protect enough to stall out Dialga's Dragon Pulses thanks to pressure. So I think that might have been the move, but it's not what happened. So Draco is just flailing against Blissey, soft-boiling, and Ziel is soft-boiling to make sure that no nonsense happens. Before he uses the last, Cole switches to Zong, and Gyros, and oh, I skipped ahead. Yeah, Giratina comes in, but it's too little, too late. Yeah, that might have, he might have had a chance there. If he comes in at 40 and then gets 6 from lefties, protects, he subs, just subs right away, maybe even, I don't know. I think it was better than just, playing this out to a loss, but it was going to be an uphill battle anyway. So this one is hella done, especially because Blissey reveals aromatherapy and heals Scarm of its burn, and it's going to come in on the Zong there. So nice team from Ziel for sure. I can dig it, especially because no one's really running Specs Ogre nowadays, and a lot of them are going to be limited by early T-Spikes. So yes, keep playing. Come on. What? Anyway. Blissey's gonna, wall the Specs Thunder's not gonna do anything. Zong walled, and I mean the one hope is that the Blissey doesn't have Toxic, but it's gonna have Toxic just so you don't lose to dumb stuff like this. Yeah, I mean I guess that was an option. Go for the last mod thing, Lugia, which would beat Scarf Dialga, beat Groudon, but Blissey's gonna have Toxic, so. That was that game, so that was genuinely an interesting one, though, because there's a lot to consider. Even in games that aren't interesting on surface level, there's a lot to consider and a lot to think about and a lot to learn. So, and I think the commentary over this one was an example of that. So, next up, we are going over to the Ubers Premier League and their semis. So, we are going to start off with Steel again, and this time against Chill Shadow, and it's time for one of my patented bathroom breaks, even though I took one before this video because I'm just that hydrated. So, BRB, and anticipate this next game with great anticipation. Your time of making like a Toxicroak in the face of an opponent with a super effective move is over, because it is time to begin this battle between two excellent players who have a vested interest in this tier, which always makes it more interesting, in my opinion. But that's a topic for another video. So, we see a Pokemon from Gen 7, apparently, and Deoxys attack. Ho-Oh lead is really cool, because Ho-Oh's problem... Okay, Ho-Oh is great because it's immensely difficult to switch into and really tough to bring down as well. Problem, Stealth Rock. Problem number 2, it's really hard to spin in this tier. So, the solution, as invented by my buddy Jirachi a couple of years ago and adopted by the general player base, who saw it was amazing, is to lead off with Ho-Oh. To make matters better, the name of the game in DPP Ubers leading is to limit the Deoxys forms, mainly speed, to one layer of hazards. And Ho-Oh doesn't do this perfectly, but with a Sacred Fire burn, you bypass that Focus Sash, and a lot of Deoxys speed don't even run Sash anymore. And with Sacred Fire, you can just potentially mow them down with if you're running Choice Band or Colberberry, or not Colberberry, Charcoal. And what also makes Ho-Oh a great lead is that T-Tar doesn't run Rock moves, so you can just EQ it, and Darkrai doesn't. This traditional Ho-Oh lead runs Lumberry, and Choice Band can run Sleep Talk. So no matter what, you're going to be great against Darkrai leads. So yeah, Ho-Oh is a great lead, and it's very cool to see it. And Chill Shadow is running something more aggressive. He's clearly running a very unique form of stall with the Deoxys attack lead. I'm just kidding about that. I mean, it's very feasible, theoretically, if you were ambitious and enterprising, but it's unlikely. It's you assume DOA is leading off offense, and you're going to be right about that. So, the question is, how do you deal with Ho-Oh? Do you get down hazards and then go to your Kyogre after? For most teams, that's going to be the answer. And most of the time, Deoxys attack is going to spike, not because it's a dedicated spiker, but because sometimes you want to beat the opposing lead up, like Rayquaza, depending on what the rest of your team is, and sometimes you want to get down hazards, but you don't want to be in that awful situation where if you attack, then you're not going to get hazards down. It is much better to go without spikes and take down the opposing lead, if it's going to be one of those fast-paced bludgeon games, and then go with a second Stealth Rocker. It's just much more solid. You can go with rocks on DOA. It's rare, generally not recommended. So, see, there are the spikes, there's the Sacred Fire, and it doesn't get the burn. It's technically less than 50% because Sacred Fire can also miss 5% of the time. If my math is correct, it's 95 accuracy, right? No, it's definitely 95. It's not 90. So, yeah, Sacred Fire does not burn, and Deoxys speed is going, or Deoxys attack is going to take advantage of this opportunity by E-speeding Ho-Oh down. So that could say, I mean, I know a lot of the player base has caught on to 2 layers of spikes not being particularly good, but it depends on what you're, I guess it doesn't necessarily just depend on what you're going to follow up with. Like Ho-Oh might now be more in range for something like a Dialga Thunder or a Latios Draco Meteor, but it also might depend on how you want to deal with the Ho-Oh later. Like a 50% Ho-Oh might still be annoying, but a 15% Ho-Oh maybe not, because you can finish it off with Giratina's Sneak or something. So there's E-Speed chunking it a little, we'll see, and it shows that it's not banded. It shows EQ, so it's likely Lum or Charcoal. So he follows up with Latios, so that might mean Sun, might mean that he just doesn't want to reveal Kyogre early. Maybe it's a slow variant, he doesn't want to get Brave Birded early on. So I definitely appreciate that route as opposed to going for 2 spikes and making Latios even more ridiculous to switch into if you don't have a Zong. So, I mean, both routes are valid, especially because if you spike twice and then you go to Kyogre, and then you draw in a Latios, which also doesn't take spikes, and I mean, then you go to your Dialga, which you probably have, and get up rocks there, but it's definitely nice when Ho is already in range of Thunder as opposed to having to hit it twice, because having to take multiple more hits from Ho can be nasty, so I definitely appreciate the E-Speed there. Anyway, now here comes a Garchomp, and that was unexpected. I mean, I get it, for sure, because it's a Scarf Chomp. I mean, if it's not a Scarf Chomp, then it's trying to pivot into Thunder and then draw a Draco. More likely going to just threaten Latios out, because Latios is not going to risk a Scarf Chomp on turn 3. But Chill Shadow makes a great move and just fires off a Draco. And not just because it hits, because that is not a common play, switching Chomp into a Latios Thunder, but just goes for the strongest move overall. He might not even have Thunder. It might be a Sun offensive team he's running. So that was a great move, and we're going to check the calc from Latios Meteor on Ho-Oh. Latios, I gotta update this sometime. Latios without Draco Meteor is a crime. Yeah, so Ubers physical attacker. Yeah, Draco Meteor. Okay, yeah, the lead Ho-Ohs run a lot of speed. They don't run HP, so because they want to be outrunning Dialgas and Groudons and Kyogres. So Draco is going to do 66 minimum, let's say, and Ho's at 65. So that was a great move, and it just hits everything harder in general, as opposed to thundering and potentially doing nothing into a special defensive Dialga or something. So that was a great move, and maybe a little ambitious on the part of Steel to try and absorb that Thunder, especially since Draco KO'd, so I think it was a lot more likely. Of course, this means that Ho-Oh can come in again, potentially can roost, and look at that, Draco doing 31. Does that necessarily signify something about the... Yeah, that Ho-Oh definitely has some bulk. It's not common, but it has at least, somewhere in the 80s in HP. So definitely some bulk, and generally Sacred Fire, Brave Bird, Earthquake, and Roost, or like Sleep Talk or something, and there's the Roost. So See, Ho is about to show how nasty it is because there's still no rocks on the field, and that's the point of lead Ho-Oh, especially when it comes in a roost later. I mean, maybe that was the whole point. Maybe it wasn't an accident that Chomp got sacked. I have to imagine it wasn't planned that Chomp got sacked, because if you're facing a DOA lead and then Latios comes in, you're facing something really offensive, and Scarf Chomp loves fighting offensive teams. It slices through them pretty good. But on the bright side, if it's not like you're totally screwed if that does happen, because now Ho is going to roost up. And I think the idea Steel had was if Latios is the thing coming into Ho-Oh after, maybe Ho-Oh is really tough to deal with. So once I get the roost off, then it's going to really terrorize things. And that was shown by CS just trying to Draco it down again, and yikes. So here comes Heatran, which is definitely uncommon. I mean, it switches into Sacred Fire. It has to run from EQ, of course. But it's uncommon on DOA offense stuff, because we know Heatran generally is run unbalanced, and it definitely signifies that CS is running a Sun team. So Giratina Origin, and then some sort of offensive poke in the back, Darkrai, Mewtwo. Definitely a lot of possibilities, but it's very uncommon to see DOA and Heatran together. I mean, unless you're running like a Scarf Tran, which is, again, uncommon. So, I mean, it's possible, but if it's not a Scarf Tran, then it's just going to flub and die. And, switching back to Latios doesn't do much because it likely doesn't run Thunder if it is on Sun. Simply because it's in Sun so much, you prefer to have something like Grass Knot and HP Fire, especially because you're probably not running like Calm Mind and Recover like Latios would, so you want maximum coverage and you want to be good in all weathers, so Draco is usually accentuated by GK and Fire. And then like a filler, I mean, you could have Thunder, but still, it's possible. Anyway, there's not enough to go off of to make a reasonable speculation about what's about to happen. Steel might think, is this going to be Scarf, or is it going to be some rocks alongside the DOA thing? Which, again, I can't stress enough how uncommon that is, especially because there's a Groudon on the back, which is very likely to be rock, so it makes more sense that this is the Scarf Pokemon on CS's team. And it's either Scarf or a pivot back to Latios. So in that sense, then, I mean, it's hard to cover both, because you don't switch to something that can... I mean, you don't want to switch to a Steel against Heatran most of the time to absorb the boom, but it might be big here because you want to handle the boom and you want to handle the Latios, so why not go to a Steel? And see, there's why you don't want to absorb it with Giratina Origin, because the move is either Scarf Tran exploding or pivoting back to Latios and trying to, threaten Thunder or bluff Thunder. I mean, Ho can roost on Draco Meteor all day long, so it's definitely valid to just stay in and go for EQ, but... if you're, and I would even go so far as to say that if you are expecting the Heatran to not be Scarf, then I would say that Sacred Fire or Brave Bird are both better moves, because Heatran is not going to stay in and pop up Stealth Rock if it is Spadef, if it even has that, and even if it is if it's not some Spadef Stealth, if it's not some Stealth Rock set, it's going to Toxic and you have Lum, so you can afford one misprediction, but that's not going to happen anyway. If the Heatran's not Scarf, it's going back to Latios, so Sacred Fire or Brave Bird are better, but Giratina Origins seemed a little, not so great. So now the final failure comes in and gets Dracoed, and good lord, that is a lot. So yeah, you never want to give Latios a free Meteor if you can help it. So... and there's the HP Fire to finish it off. So I think Ho-Oh should have come in there, because at -2, then we know it's not being threatened at all. Especially because, and I'm even gonna say that since CS didn't go for a Thunder at -2, then because -2 Draco into -4 Draco is not gonna finish off Ho-Oh, whereas -2 Thunder. A couple of -2 Thunder into -2 Draco Meteor probably could if the Ho-Oh lacked Roost, but so I'm gonna say probably not Thunder. So after that Draco, then definitely Ho-Oh should have been preserved or switched in, because that means another Crown of Terror from Ho-Oh and another sacrifice from Fortress. And by the looks of this team, the 2 Draco switches have been Garchomp and Fori. So then you're going to need all the sacks you can get against this Latios, especially because it hasn't even taken a % of health yet. So instead of Ho-Oh, here comes Groudon, which eats a -2 Grass Knot for not great, a lot of damage because spikes, and no leftover, so no chance of healing out of range, so likely Lum or Custap. Those are the likeliest options anyway. But, you know, it might not... Actually, I think I like that more, because you want... Oh, I mean, Sun makes Thunder even less of a good option against Ho-Oh, and Heatran on Chill Shadow's side means that's less likely to be a Kyogre, or actually, I'm going to... You know, Kyogre... Heatran Rain happens sometimes in Gen 5, but almost never in DPP. So... It rocks, and then going to Ho-Oh, so Ho-Oh is even more threatening. It's now tougher to pivot around Ho-Oh because there are rocks up. So, you know, I take that Groudon rocks was definitely a good move. But CS is all over it and catches the pivot beautifully by going to his own Groudon to threaten Stone Edge, I assume. But, yeah, Steel has no choice but to stay in and Sacred Fire and hope the Groudon either doesn't have Stone Edge or misses it. T-Wave won't get CS anywhere. I mean, it's a good assumption because... half the reason Ho-Oh is so threatening is because a lot of teams don't run Stone Edge on, I mean, most stuff, but Groudon especially, because Ho-Oh is so uncommon, and they usually deal with getting up rocks and dealing with Ho-Oh that way, and instead they like to run things like T-Wave and Lava Plume, or, you know, Fire Punch, Overheat, Dragon Claw, that's the one I was thinking of also, but you generally, yeah, you prefer Dragon Claw as coverage over Stone Edge, and Ho-Oh makes you rue the day. So, I mean, on one hand, the Sacred Fire is forced because not a lot of options to switch in, and you don't want to, you know, the spinner's down, and you're not going to be able to, you don't want Ho-Oh to just be flailing uselessly at 34% later. But you also you're also going to beat most Groudon, because they don't, and plus it's burned. So yeah, it just gets up rock. So if he can chase out the Ho-Oh again, then it's probably going to be fine. I think Burned Stone Edge... Actually, I don't remember if Burned Stone Edge KOs... I don't think it KOs Ho-Oh from support Groudon. Yeah, I mean... Okay, that's... Yeah, no, I mean... this... Yeah, okay, it definitely wouldn't. If it's like a more offensive Rocks Groudon, then probably not. But that Sacred Fire did quite... Where's the replay? Yeah, it did a 54. Good lord. 54, so it might be Charcoal. Well, actually, no, sorry. It could also just be a Spidef, as opposed to something like Adamant. So, yeah, I think that's a lot likelier, because Spidef Groudon is used to sort of soften the weakness to things like opposing Dracos. You don't always want Heatran switching into them, and it helps with Kyogre as well, especially when your answer is Latios and not Latias. So, Ho-Oh continues to terrorize the opposition. I gotta say, I'm not crazy about that Brave Bird at all, because I don't think it was important to try and chip Heatran or Latios on the switch. I think you just want to roost on them. And as you saw there, the recoil was huge, because look, that's 13% recoil, 84 to 71, and Ho-Oh is scrapping for every percent as it is, you know, with roosting and all that. So I gotta say, I think Sacred Fire was better, unless you're like really afraid of running out of PP. But there was still 4 after that. And Heatran, I mean, pivoting around, Latios gets roosted on. You can't pivot forever. So, I don't know, I think Sacred Fire was better there. But Dialga comes in, and we don't know what kind of set this is. It's safe to assume it's not going to be something slow like Bulk Up, Rest Talk on such a fast-paced team like this. But it could be some sort of a... The thing is, Ho-Oh is really good against most Dialga, too. Thunder is not reliable against it in the sun, and it can take Draco Meteors. It has Roost. It's... I mean, Adamant Orb Outrage, I mean, it can get burned by Sacred Fire before it can even hit on the physical side, and that's why Ho is so good. Burn would be annoying physical attackers and shrug off special attackers. So, there's the Draco, and that drops. And I gotta say, I was not expecting that. And I gotta say, there, again, look at how big the recoil there was. Now, okay, I wasn't going crazy. That is boosted. Because, good lord, that is crazy. Now, Adamant Orb possible, but it's likelier to be Specs. And it's very fast Specs at that. Because it outran Ho-Oh, which... I mean, maybe the Ho-Oh, maybe Steel didn't want to put too much speed on it. But, yeah, definitely a Specs Draco. But, I mean, depending on how much... Because we know it had HP from how little it took from Latios' Draco. So, I mean... 71 as opposed to being at 84 definitely could have been out of range for even the modest Specs Dialga, and I'm willing to... There are, you know, very reasonable chances of it being timid Specs Dialga. So yeah, that extra Brave Bird recoil really hurt, and now it's going to be tough to mount a comeback with a weakened Groudon and a Giratina Origin and a Last. I mean, not impossible because there's a lot of power, but CS is definitely up in the numbers game. So here comes Latios, about to drop a Poke Aim, and here comes Heatran, ready to absorb it, and it Calm Minds instead, and it is lefty, so this is definitely, I mean, unusual. It's likely to be Giratina Origin Last, but I gotta say, I was really expecting it's Giratina Origin Last or it's a Scarfer Last, because otherwise, since the Dialga is not Scarf, then a lot, as was assumed by most when it came out, I can't really fault Steel for staying in. I mean, not that there was a choice either way. Everything drops, and if Ho switches out, then it's, gone anyway, and not worth preserving at 34, so, but still, I mean, most people assumed Scarf when it came out, and I did as well. But the Last definitely should want some speed. I mean, I don't think Giratina Origin's Shadow Sneak is enough, and it's not even a Scarf Heatran. So it's definitely unusual to see Lefty's Tran alongside DOA lead, but that's what it is. And it is, Lefty's Tran is definitely nearly perfect against Sun Latios. So, I mean, Sun boosted sold you Draco. I mean, Sun, it doesn't weaken Thunder, it just makes the accuracy 50, which is bad. But it hits and gets a para at that, with that little extra 30%. So, not great odds. So, what's Heatran going to do? It lands the Toxic. So, now another Thunder has to be hit. But then the problem is, if it does, what's CS's faster poke? How is he going to respond? So, Thunder drops twice. So, Calm Mind, Thunder, I mean, but Calm Mind sometimes seen on Latios. Thunder, you don't see it as much. I generally think you see Thunder more on 4 attacks, Latios, because then when you have the 4th attack, then you can afford to have that Kyogre coverage without making yourself, I mean, I guess, yeah, you can use Calm Mind in that GK slot. I just like having GK in general, because it is fantastic coverage against Groudon and Kyogre and Tyranitar. So, but CM Thunder is fine too. So now CS has to risk his own Latios, which is not great because it's going to be destroyed with the swiftness. And I mean, it's still, I guess it's just a matter of outlasting the Latios and making it go minus everything. It's still at neutral special attack, effectively, by the way, because of Sold You. So it's still got a neutral Draco Meteor to throw out, but now it can take the Dialga. And Specs Dialga, good against Giratina, probably going to be faster if it's a bulkier set, and Groudon's going to get finished off. So it might just be a Specs Dragon Pulse sweep, and look at that, Draco Meteor still doing a ton. But yeah, that might be what happens here, because clearly there was not some speed in the last slot. So here comes the Custab Groudon, as semi-expected. And I'm a big fan of Custab Groudon, especially on an offensive team like this. I gotta say, Steel has a really, really cool team. The only issue is that switching into Draco Meteor is kind of tough. So you really gotta make the you gotta play at a fast pace. And in comes the Lugia Last, and that's, I mean, this is an incredibly unusual team. DOA lead into CM Lugia and Lefty's Heatran with no spin block. That is unusual. I mean, the Specs Dialga is cool and definitely fits, but unusual to say the least. So now Ice, so I'm not sure why that Calm Mind was used there, because you would much rather just Ice Beam, and then if Giratina comes in, then you Calm Mind on that, and beat it easily, as opposed to needlessly taking the Thunder Wave. But it's, oh yeah, that's it's not even because it's Outrage, then now there's a chance that CS actually loses with a crit or a para. I mean, I guess it can if it paras, then the Giratina can also confuse potentially, and then hit itself. But that CM was definitely a mistake. And there's the next Outrage, and it roosts because it has to be out of Groudon Dragonclaw range anyway. But he's still playing with fire. And now I mean, better Ice Beam. I really don't know why he didn't just do that immediately. And, yeah, so now the game is going to be over. So that was a really interesting one. Again, all these games have been really interesting to think about, and that's what this commentary is for. Because I think a lot of games you look at and you just kind of click through the replay and you don't really see what's going on in them. But if you really take the time to think about them, then you will find a lot. Okay, now we're going to go to the other Ubers Premier League semis game. It is Soulwind versus Highlord. Highlord is one of the most renowned DPP Ubers players. He started playing the last several years, really made a name for himself, makes some crazy, crazy teams. He's got a bunch of great records. And Soulwind, in addition to being one of the best players of all time, period, is also a DPP Ubers aficionado and is excellent in the tier as well. So, Groudon lead, not popular, and this UPL, then we started seeing a lot of Kyogre lead because, again, not a lot of Sash Deoxys, and therefore Kyogre can just OHKO it. And I think the rationale behind Groudon lead is to get early rocks, because with a Sassy, then you outspeed Kyogre, and you can take Ice Beams, you can take Surfs and Sun, and you can get up early rocks, and that's really important because most of the time when you used to see Groudon lead, it used to be a signifier of a bulky Spikes team, and the earlier you get rocks, the better. And this trend of Kyogre leads definitely helps Groudon in that regard, especially because it's not terrified of Darkrai leads, of Spadef. It can Stealth Rock on Rayquaza leads, and it's great against Tentacruel leads because you just threaten to drop them turn 1. So a lot of people were kind of ragging on Soulwind for bringing a Groudon lead, but I didn't see it as a... I mean, it's not good against Deoxys. That's the main reason Groudon doesn't see much. But I definitely think that if there is a time with all the things I just mentioned, then if there's a time to bring it, then it would be reasonable to bring a Groudon lead now. Unfortunately, Groudon faces a Dio Speed lead, and Dio Speed goes for Spikes. So that's interesting because either it's a Scarf Deoxys Speed, which aims to trick its Scarf onto other Deoxys Speed leads, and therefore get around stupid taunt speed tie games, or it's even rarer, and it's just an all-out spiking Dio Speed. Now, I say rarer in the general sense. Most good players have experimented with pure Spikes Dio Speed for the extra like taunt and T-Wave and coverage moves. That's definitely been used a lot. But on average, it's used less than the standard Stealth Rock Spike sets or the standard non-standard of Trick Scarf. So if it is that set, then he's choosing not to taunt the Groudon because he just wants to stack as many spikes as possible. And these Dio leads, like I said, they run Sash less and less nowadays because they want to survive things like well, not necessarily. They want to survive things that would... Well, okay, no. It's either you run Lumberry for Darkrai, and you want to have enough Spef to survive its Dark Pulse without Sash, or you're running Colberberry to live T-Tar so that you can, so it doesn't bring you down to 1 HP and then bypass your Sash with Sand. So either way, not a lot of, but either way, you're running a lot of bulk, and you see that here because this is a support Groudon and it's 3-hit KOing with Earthquake, and Spikes again on EQ. And I think most players would have taken the Spike on turn 1 thing. I mean, I don't know. There's also, you could say Spike on turn 1 means, very likely Scarf, so you just go for your rocks, so you at least have something. But you could also make the argument, oh, it didn't trick Groudon on the first turn. It's not Scarf. I don't want to get taunted. I'm just going to EQ it. And you have that same conundrum on turn 2 because it's the exact same situation except Deoxys lived a second EQ. And well, at least now you know it's not going to be tricking you, the Scarf, but that third layer is going to be nasty. You want to get up those rocks, but if it's going to taunt you, you want to just KO it and limit it to 2 layers. But I don't know. I think personally that when you're going to get 2 layers, that if you have the chance to go for 3, go for 3. You're not supposed to be stopping rocks at all costs. Getting up 3 layers of Spikes in exchange for Spikes in exchange for the opposing rocks is more than a fair deal. So I think that going for rocks for Soulwind was definitely reasonable there on this turn. I mean, but Spikes and another EQ. So Deoxys has gone down, and now in comes Kyogre with 3 layers of Spikes. Of course, Latias can come in, and that's exactly what happens. Doesn't care about Hydro, doesn't care about Spikes. It definitely doesn't want to give it doesn't love the free switch into a Pursuiter like Scizor or T-Tar that could come in, but the likelier thing that's going to come in, we also mentioned this in the other game, is that Dialga is going to come in on the Latias and then get the rocks up there. We went over this in the Cole game, I believe. So Soulwind goes for Dragon Pulse because he knows... I mean, you could say go to Groudon and get up rocks, but weakening Dialga is also good news for Latias in the long term. especially because a lot of Dialga aren't going to be able... they don't run Draco Meteor, they run Dragon Pulse, so it's not going to KO a Soldew Latias. But see, there's Dragon Pulse, and now Soulwind's Groudon switches in, but it's going to get up rocks, and so does oh, never mind, he tries to, but he gets parried. So good move on Highlord's and reading the necessary rocks from Soulwind and not fall behind. And Soulwind definitely had to go for rocks there. If you EQ into Latios there, then you're really far behind. Because next time you're going to come in, you're going to be even weaker from spikes. You got to get up those rocks. So it was a great move from Highlord reading that, but he gets fully parried. And he decides, you know, I'm going to save the Giratina for later, or the Dialga for later. And now Giratina comes in, 3 layers of spikes, you know, threatening Groudon. And Draco's Groudon lives, so it is that Spadef. Got a lot of Spadef, and it Dragon Claws. So that's significant because now it's in range for Latias's Pulse and a lot of other stuff. But and it's also a -2 special attack, so it's easier to switch into. But still does a lot because that is a Scarf Dialga. So well, we'll get into that later. So Scarf Dialga still takes a ton because, you know, Griseosaur, that's clearly got a lot of special attack investment as well, and the 3 layers of spikes. So Soulwind is going to fire off his own Draco Meteor here, because, God, I just love this tier. Or Dragon Pulse. I think Draco was fine there, because this allows... a Dragon Pulse would have allowed Dialga and Kyogre to both switch in, like, a lot more safely. Kyogre shows lefties and fires off, and... So yeah, I think that was definitely the move on that turn. Maybe he expected Giratina to just stay in, and he didn't want to risk a miss. But I think, you know, he's kind of struggling to keep up, so he's got to fire off those big hits, and yeah. Because a Scarf Dialga locked into Pulse is going to be setup fodder for something anyway. It's not like -2 is going to make a huge difference in that regard. Especially because most of his team is healthy, he's going to be able to handle like a Rock Polish Groudon or something. So... because you're not going to just rely on a specially defensive Groudon as your only measure. You're probably going to have spikes, and that means you're probably going to have a Giratina Origin, so... Yeah, so Latias comes in on Kyogre once again, and it's going to have to recover, and there's Groudon, so cool stuff, and Latias recovers, so here the Groudon is. We don't know if it's Paradance, meaning T-Wave Sword Dance, or Rock Polish, or whatever. There's T-Wave, so that's a classic combo. T-Wave, one of Groudon or Kyogre for the other to abuse. Usually easy to fit on Groudon because it doesn't need as much coverage as Kyogre, which needs Hydro, Ice Beam, and usually Thunder. So Latias is really neutered here, and Soulwind is struggling to dish out the damage, dish out as much damage. So he sacks Groudon to... Well, Latias is pretty much done for, but he at least brought Groudon down low to Dialga range. As Soulwind sacks his useless Groudon and brings in Dialga again, and doesn't Draco again. I guess he underestimated Groudon, but part of me also thinks this Scarf Dialga might just not have Draco Meteor or something, because those were 2 clear Draco instances, and Soulwind's a great player, and I just think he might have been trying something funky like Fire Blast, Thunder, and then like Aura Sphere or something. So, I don't know, that's a possible explanation. I wouldn't fault him for that if so. So, but yeah, he comes up short against Groudon, which the Paradance set runs a lot of bulk. And, yeah, so, I mean, I guess he could be T-Wave Rocks and just a lefties, non-Rocks Dialga, but I don't know, that doesn't seem as likely. So now here comes Giratina, so it's another one of those quick stall kinds of deals. And if there is a... Well, the thing is that... support Dialga commonly runs Roar. If it's a Protect support Dialga, then this Giratina might be sitting pretty. But if it's not, if it's Roar Dialga, then it's kind of not so good. So here comes Fori, and finally the rocks go up. And Giratina's at 52, but even after rocks, it's going to survive a payback and chase Fori out. And someone makes a great move and goes for Toxic. And if he's running his standard set of Toxic Protect, like he loves in Ubers, then he's good to go. And the Giratina shows Roar, and it's tough to fit Draco Meteor, Shadow Sneak, and then Roar and HP Fire, so Soulwind's pretty much has no choice but to stand and Spike here. So at least he's making up some ground. But the last is Heatran, so it's another one of those Sunny, Giratina, Heatran, Quick Stall kind of deals. The Scarf Dialga, I mean, it's a good, solid team for sure. But I think early on when what was the thing dropping the Dracos? Yeah, I think early on when the Giratina was at -2, he could have absorbed the second with Fori maybe. Especially because at that point, Highlord had only shown Kyogre, and even if it's a double weather team with Kyogre, Groudon, and Giratina, if it's got a Kyogre, then the Giratina is not going to have HP Fire, and at that point, then you would be able to get up your spikes on the -2 Giratina, and then you would have a lot more pressure being exerted on Highlord's team. So that was the thing I wanted to mention earlier and said we'd get to later. So yeah, he roars in Heatran, and he goes to Kyogre now, which is a good move in case Heatran has Protect, which it doesn't traditionally, but it's a good move just to be on the safe side, because worst case you get, you sacrifice it. I mean, if Soulwind, it would take a real lunatic, because it very feasibly could be Draco, Roar, EQ, Sneak. That's a lot easier to fit, because like we said, HP Fire, Roar, generally not common. You're going to want that sort of a Tyranitar hitting move. Roar, Will-O-Wisp would even be more common. But, yeah, I'm going to stop myself there before I explode in all my possibilities of thoughts. But yeah, it would be some real lunacy to stay in there. You wouldn't have HP Fire too once because of the Kyogre thing. But to stay in there and roar, not even just assume you're faster and maybe Lava Plume, because a lot of Heatran are fast and Giratina can be slow. I mean, if that's the assumption you're going to make, sure, and I guess then you could roar, but it's unlikely that Kyogre is getting roared there. I mean, even if it goes for Lava Plume or something, and that is a speedy Tran, because as you see there, it gets its leftovers before Kyogre, something you should always keep an eye on. And yeah, the thing is, Kyogre is a huge threat itself with Latias Parad, and it goes down, and now the only hope is for Giratina to pull some sort of miracle. And I mean, Giratina's definitely worked through greater obstacles. Well, maybe not greater obstacles. This is already pretty tough. But yeah, the Protect gives it that little health, and it burns Ice Beam PP. 2 of them, in fact. And yeah, Ice Beam does very little after the Calm Mind, as you see there. So you see how this could get out of hand quickly. The only problem is that it's getting off to a very late start in terms of health, so it can't sub and Protect and Calm Mind forever. But it Calm Mind's again there, and 17, that's crazy. So the sub is not getting broken, and Ice Beam is running out quickly. So this might just be it. I mean, Giratina can, or sorry, especially defensive Dialga can still take a. Plus, yeah, with rocks and spikes and the second Calm Mind, then then Dialga's window to to roar Giratina out might have just closed. I mean, he might have to like switch it in to get extra lefties on another Protect, for example. But that's not what happens. He goes for Protect, and Highlord Calm Minds himself. So that was really, really well done, forcing Soulwind's second Calm Mind. That was a great use of Calc and thinking ahead. Force the second Calm Mind, and then the Protect, and then Calm Mind yourself. And Giratina's not going to be able to get through that without some like triple Protect BS, because, yeah, he's got 3 Ice Beams left. But so you need 1 Protect. I guess you feasibly could have Calm Minded again there, but that, needless. So 1 Protect. And then even if you get the second Protect, or I guess he goes for the Calm Mind, trying for that low roll again, but boosted Kyogre makes it harder to boost up against it. And it's going to go down, and that's going to be ball game. So that was a really interesting game as well. I mean, again, a lot you can take away from these battles, even if it doesn't work out perfectly. So, next up, we have our penultimate game. This is for the DPP DPP Premier League. Somehow that's easier to say. And it is the semis tiebreaker, because the 2 teams tied overall. So once again, we see Cole49, and we see M Dragon, another one of the best players ever, who is also a fantastic DPP Ubers player. Is he the only one of these players? Yeah, I think he is the only one of the player. Oh, no, sorry. Soulwind also played it during current gen. Not as much. Like, he came around near the end, I believe. But M Dragon is the only of the players shown so far that played the tier regularly during Generation 4 as the main generation. So that's cool. Anyway, Cole looking for some playoff redemption. M Dragon's one of the best ever. Here we go. Dio Speed, a classic. Hariyama, unusual, but it's kind of a spin on the limit Deoxys to 1 layer genre of lead, and other hazard leads in general, because with Fake Out you break the sash and then you pay back it down, and with Guts you're really strong, And you can potentially even fit in Bullet Punch to really, with those 2 priority moves, for the price of 1, then you can really just not take any nonsense. And Hariyama is deceptively difficult to switch into, because Stab Close Combat when boosted by Guts is really strong, and with Payback you crush Giratina Origin, so can potentially be a really big threat. You don't really need Ice Punch, so you can fit Fake, Payback, Bullet, and Close Combat. So the turn here is definitely Fake Out. And the thing is that switching to Giratina Origin on the Fake Out doesn't even do very much, because Hariyama's still going to be at full health, and it's got I mean, it's not going to love taking Draco Meteor, but especially when boosted by Griseosaur, but it's going to love paybacking you, and Deoxys won't have gotten up its hazard, so you would definitely take that. I mean, doing some pivoting, like to Giratina on Fake, and then Dialga or something on Payback, then, I mean, that's a lot of pivoting just for Elite Hariyama. So, and you're getting a lot of team reveal and not executing your strategy. I mean, and if you go back to Deoxys after, then yeah. So, Fake, Deoxys stays in, takes it. Is it just going to get up rocks and then finish? No, it's just going to get up spikes. So that's even better. So again, we don't know if that's a Scarf Deoxys speed or just a regular, not regular, because Scarf Deoxys speed is the regular spikes only DOS lead set. But, or we don't know if it's just a Spikes DOS without rocks. So that means rocks are going to come later from Groudon or Dialga most likely, and now Kyogre comes in, and that does have the sheer power necessary to KO, what's its face, Hariyama from high health. And M-Dragon doubles to Giratina O, which I thought was unusual, since, like, what's going to switch into Kyogre early in the game? Dialga, Palkia, Latios. So Giratina doesn't really get a good double off on any of them. And, good thought, trying to take advantage of the switch rather than just attacking. And he's not punished too hard for it, because Jirachi can switch into Latios and takes Draco, and that's a Spit-F Jirachi. So that means rocks or U-turn, depending on if he has rocks here or somewhere else, as Latios is going to get out of there. In comes a Bronzong. Okay, so that's fine. Rachi gets up rocks, and Zong will now get up its own rocks in response. So we don't know what kind of Rachi set this is. If T-Wave, U-turn, Wish, rocks, Jirachi sets are definitely, once again, Nebulos. I just love how he says that. So he goes for Toxic, aiming for Kyogre, I guess. I don't know if, again, I think getting up rocks early is more important. But he's really going for that Toxic. I mean, I guess he's really afraid of Kyogre coming in completely unscathed on rocks, which, I mean, fair, but you got to get him up at some point or you're just going to fall behind in the longer term. And M-Dragon seems not keen to switch Jirachi out. I mean, I kind of get it, because with Jirachi, I mean, you're going to lose a lot of Iron Heads, but it's not like Jirachi's going to flinch out the entire team. Bronzong's not threatening enough. And so it's basically like if Bronzong is just offering you itself, like if you just want to lose a bunch of Iron Heads to take out Bronzong potentially, then sure, take it. So I'm assuming that's M-Dragon's rationale. And Cole takes advantage of that, finally stops Toxic and gets up his own rocks. And M-Dragon's just going to keep plugging ahead. And we don't even know if this Bronzong can... Okay, wait, sorry, that was the turn after a couple turns not moving. I mean, he Toxic twice in Toxic rocks, so that was pretty good. Then he EQs finally, does 36, but he's trying to get some more health back, but this Bronzong's not having it. And suddenly the Jirachi is not going to be able to switch into Latios safely anymore, so he does what he probably should have done before and goes to Kyogre. And... just EQ, I mean, we don't know if he EQ'd or Toxic there, but just EQing the Ogre would have been fine for Chip. But, it, definitely is better than giving it the free switch, because now it's going to be back at pretty much full after the second round of lefties. Zong's got to get out of there, and comes Latios. Is M-Dragon going to predict that? No, he just goes for the straight-ahead Surf. We don't even know what that Kyogre set is. I mean, when you see the Dio speed lead, then you definitely assume that it's going to be offensive, so... the Ice Beams or Thunders are both good calls there, as opposed to just the straight-ahead Surf, because Latios is healthy, and you probably want to not just lose Zong for nothing, but I get Surfing there. Maybe Latios doesn't want to come in, specifically because the Jirachi is so weak, that maybe now, since it's free Draco bombings, then, why lose it? And why potentially, get it messed up and let it do less damage than it could have. on the other hand, I get Cole's perspective. He's like, I don't want to lose Bronzong and then bring Latios in and not KO Kyogre from full. You know, I got to get something done. I got to stay out in front. So, good move. Thunder doesn't quite get it done, but I mean, it does a ton of damage. And, oh, whoops. Okay, I accidentally unplugged my computer, which meant it was temporarily losing its stuff. Anyway, so Kyogre gets the T-Wave off, so that's big, but those Soulwind boosted Draco Meteors are still going to be huge, or Thunders actually, and Jirachi just drops to 1, so that was definitely, you know, some little overeager on the Jirachi end. So now here comes Giratina, which is now a huge threat with the 57 Parad Zong and the Parad Latios. So that at least, the chip on Bronzong was definitely good, but I think he should have, you know, taken it after the first one and gotten out of there. So yeah, Giratina at least is now, ooh, that Draco, I guess it kind of sucks, but if he has Thunder, which is very likely on a rain team, then it's actually not going to bother him that much. That does nothing at all, so that might be a more physically invested, like, fast Giratina Origin with not as much special attack, so maybe he would have preferred to, I mean, he gets in on another full para, so now Kyogre is really threatening. Maybe, maybe he should have double switched earlier, but because I think there's no way Latios was just getting sacked like that, and Zong was definitely coming in. So I think going Giratina and then doubling Kyogre was definitely a way to, you know, keep Giratina healthy and continue putting the pressure on with Kyogre without risking switching it into a Toxic or an EQ from Zong. So I think that definitely would have helped out in keeping the pressure on. And Bronzong goes down to a Surf. And here comes a... Oh, this team is really cool. I wonder who built it. Because mid-game Deoxys' attack is incredibly rare, but also incredibly threatening. Of course, unlike Mewtwo, it just gets automatically dropped by a Giratina Shadow Sneak, but with Deoxys, or sorry, with Jirachi down, then big threat. So we don't know what coverage, it's going to have Superpower, Thunder, Ice Beam, and then like E-Speed is usually common. That's the go-to set. You can mix in your Fire Punches or whatever, but that's what you would expect on average. And it's likely that it's that because there's a Bronzong, and that probably means Kyogre. Zong is much more common on rain than sun. So, and yeah, you definitely want Zong when you've got a DOA because you gotta have something to switch into all the Scarfers and priority being thrown at it. So that very synergistic pick, and you offset the Bronzong, you know, hazard weakness of sorts by leading off with Hariyama. So cool synergy all around. I like it. Anyway, here comes Giratina. Bronzong is down, so that means that it is not going to be walling Giratina anymore. But I mean, imagine if this Giratina, and he makes a great prediction going for the Shadow Sneak, or sorry, the Earthquake, so he doesn't just Shadow Sneak into Hariyama. But, and there's the Bullet Punch, cool set. But imagine if this Giratina wasn't Toxic. So, that double switch to Kyogre really would have helped him out. So, Cole's playing this really, really well. And he's got the Kyogre in, and M-Dragon hasn't shown a true Kyogre check. I mean, you don't have to have a Kyogre counter on offensive teams, but you have to have something that can, you know, deal with it. So, in some capacity. So, there's a Sneak, he lets it go down. And there's a Hydro Pump, so offensive Calm Mind or just a really aggressive Scarf variant. Both possible, no lefties shown. And in comes Palkia, so there's the Kyogre check and a vicious Spikes Abuser. And Spatial Rend and a crit. We don't know if that one mattered because it could be Lustrous Orb. And, I mean, it's also likely Scarf because the likelihood of it being Scarf is higher than, you know, earlier in the game because M-Dragon's running out of viable Scarfers. Because if it's not this, then it's got to be his last. Because he wasn't a Scarf Ogre, wasn't a Scarf Rachi. So versus, you know, standard Kyogre, then Spatial Rend is not KOing, so that crit was really helpful. But if it's Lustrous Orb, then it could definitely have mustered the 53%. Although, it's still a roll, as you see there. So definitely lucky crit. I mean, Spatial Rend has a high crit rate, so there's that, but still lucky. So, Latios being paired really helpful, so T-Wave Kyogre is paying dividends on this team. That's if it is non-Scarf Palkia anyway. But Cole reveals the Kabutops, and that is terrifying. As talk about taking over games late game, a Swift Swimmer is one of the most threatening things you can face, and it's especially scary here if it is Choice Band, like as it often is, because Stone Edge against Palkia, if it's a hasty Palkia, is often going to KO, and Palkia is often Hasty because you want plus speed, but you don't want minus Spadef because you're switching into Ice Beams from Kyogre and other special attacks. So you go minus defense, and Banded Stone Edge is very likely to KO after Rocks. So, and even Life Orb has a good odds. Whoops, sorry. And so there goes the Stone Edge. Let me just see it in all its glory again. Stone Edge, and it just drops. My god, so that is Adamant banned for sure. And in comes M-Dragon's last, a Manaphy. So that's terrifying because it's terrifying because if it's Calm Mind Rest, then it can potentially, this is so cool by the way, with Rest Hydration, it can Life Orb stall Deoxys attack with Rest. Even if, actually it doesn't even matter if it's Calm Mind, I guess, because even, it has to boost of some sort, or it might lose to Latios, potentially, but the thing is that even if Deoxys attacks Thunder does 99% every turn, Manaphy, as long as it starts out at 100 of course, then Manaphy will just keep resting and stall it out that way, and that is really unique and really cool. Of course, it depends on what set the Manaphy is, and I mean, talk about taking advantage of T-Wave support from Kyogre, you know, to outspeed the Latios, but he's got to deal with more fast stuff. He's got to deal with Kabutops, and, you know, the Tail Glow offensive set, the kind of fast Kyogre, takes a ton from Stone Edge, so it's not going to be able to take that and DOA after. But if it's Bold, then maybe. And Bold Rest Manaphy is quite common because it's one of the, I mean, it's not the Bold part, it's just the max HP part that lets it answer Darkrai because it can't be slept in rain. It just heals off. So Stone Edge, if it's Bold and, you know, lots of defense EVs, as it does enjoy to handle things like Groudon, then CB Stone Edge is still going to, well, it's not going to 2-hit KO it from full. And it can, as a, whoops, that's the last game, and has a very free rest, so it's got the rest, it's got to go for the rest here. No, it just goes for the Calm Mind, and there are the lefties, so I get, he wants the Calm Mind to deal with Latios and, you know, have less for the lefties, but let's see the calc. Kabutops is Stone Edge, whoops, that's the wrong one. Kabutops is Stone Edge against, ooh, yikes. Yeah, so that was a big miss because Kabutops... Wait, no, that's from 73%. That doesn't... Yeah, I knew that didn't seem right. Okay, so, I mean, that's not fantastic odds, but that had a... let's call it 73% chance, roughly, to 2-hit KO after Rocks and Lefties. And, I mean, you can get into Stone Edge accuracy, especially because it just hit Palkia, but Palkia also just crit Kyogre, so we're just not... We're going to skip that whole debacle altogether. And we are just going to get into what's happening now. So, from 94%... then there's still a decent, you know, we're just going to call it 93 and round up, a low chance to 2-hit KO after lefties here, and remember there's always the threat of a Stone Edge crit, which does, well, a Stone Edge crit from full HP, because again, speaking of high crit rates, is a 25% chance to KO, but then there's also the, you have to get the crit, you have to hit, you have to get the crit, you have to get the roll, so a lot of odds going on here. Anyway, so Cole doesn't really have many better options than just plowing through with Stone Edge, and yeah, that first Stone Edge miss really burned him because now he's going to rest and hydration, and he's got a Stone... I mean, M-Dragon, if he's smart, he just rest stalls the hydrations, but yeah, here comes DOA, and we're about to see that issue. I mean, the rest fails, but... Here's, see, look, he's got to start, look, Thunder does, oh my god, that does so much. So yeah, if it was Tail Glow, not Calm Mind, then he'd be doomed, but, and that's why he stayed in Stone Edge the first time. But yeah, now he just gets rest stalled here, so, with the Life Orb. So M-Dragon, I mean, he had to rest stall, no, that was a tough turn, because, if Cole switches to DOA on the first Calm Mind, or on the rest on the first turn, then he just KOs with Thunder and the game's over. So there was a lot to consider there. But there's also the fact that now he has to try to stall out the... He had to, after the first Calm Mind, he was good to go. He had to rely on, you know, rolls, and the combination of rolls and misses, which, you know, fair enough. So, and then he had to PP stall the Stone Edges, which was fair because not a lot of them left. And then from there, he was probably good to go. So there's the second Thunder. I mean, he's got four Thunders before he goes down? Or maybe even more. No, yeah, he's got 3 more Life Orb hits. And 2 more after this. Para, he has to full Para before he can Hydration it off. Doesn't happen. He's got 2 more. And then, yep, 1 more. Yikes. Look at Manaphy stalling it. Isn't that just the coolest thing ever? And this is why Manaphy is a slept-on threat. And he doesn't. And he gets the rest off. And he's got a hydration, so... Now, I assume he just KOs the Kabutops and wins. Kabutops gets the crit. Oh, he hits crits and gets the roll. Okay, we don't know what the defense EVs on Manaphy were. It could have been lower, but that was a hell of a finish. My God. Yeah, I mean, we know all the odds that went into that game, and that was a tough ending, so we're just going to leave it there because we have 1 more game to go. Okay, so that was the DPP Premier League Semis tiebreak, and sadly, the DPP Finals series went without either Ubers game getting played, much to my chagrin. I waited until it was done to make this video. And, yeah, so instead we are going to finish with another hell of a game in the Ubers Premier League, UPL, their finals, which is Chill Shadow appearing again, and again, Soulwind. So, here we go. Dio Speed from Soulwind, Tentacruel from Chill Shadow. This is Tentacruel's dream matchup. I mean, even if it's getting tricked to Scarf, it's getting down T-Spikes, and Dio Speed teams are going to have something annoyed by T-Spikes. And, of course, this is very rare, but some Dio Speed teams have adapted to running Psycho Boost, lots of special attack to mess up Tentacruel, and then Tentacruel adapted back by running Bulk to survive Psycho Boost. I love these little, fun little games. It can be annoying sometimes, but as long as you're aware, you'll generally be fine, especially because worst comes to worst, you just slap Sash on your Tentacruel as when it was first being used. So yeah, so here's the threat. There goes Rocks. Tentacruel T-Spikes as planned. So here's the thing from here. So you get up Rocks with Dio Speed, then you go to Giratina, you force Tentacruel out, you double back to Dio Speed, you spike over and over, and you're getting pressure down. Of course, you try to get up Rocks as soon as possible with your Tentacruel, if you're the Tentacruel user as well, of course. But you got to contend with the spikes that DOS is throwing down, so that's why the double from Giratina is so important, rather than just Dracoing into Dialga. So there's the Giratina. Someone makes a great, Chill Shadow makes a great play in Icy Winds, but that does nothing. That is a really bulky Giratina. That wants to live Palkia's Spatial Rends after like 3 Rocks rounds. So in comes Zong, and Soulwind goes for EQ, expecting a Dialga switch. So that was a good thought. But I think the double to Dio Speed was still better overall, especially because we've seen a ton of Tentacruel Bronzong stuff recently, as you saw in this video. So what's interesting about that Zong is that it doesn't show lefties, so it could be cussed at, which is very cool. If you're running a more aggressive team and you want Zong to be useful even at low health after switching into Draco Meteors all game long, then you cuss tap and you explode on something like Kyogre. It's awesome. So Dio Speed comes in here, which is cool and all. Doesn't show Lum. And, oh, it's Trick. It's, when it gets a Choice Band. Receiving a Sash. So, Soulwind, really, I like that. He was ahead of the trends. He was not going to get his Dio Speed KO'd on the first turn by a Kyogre. Very nicely done. He would have gotten a Brox and Spikes and, you know, started rolling on down the road. But, instead, with not doubling to Dio Speed there, then he loses a turn and he gets his Dio Speed tricked. And I assume he's just going to throw down all 3 Spikes, which, you know, is fine. As Zong, at least the good news for Soulwind there is that at least he doesn't give the Bronzong lefty, so it's not going to be healing. So actually, he doesn't even go for the 3rd layer of spikes, and he has a T-Spikes absorber, and he's running Rain offense because there's a Quillfish there whose niche is, I mean, it's not as good as Swift Swim Sweeper as Kabutops and Kingdra, but it has T-Spikes absorption and explosion. And that's really cool. And Swords Dance as well. So there's payback from Zong. As the T-Spikes get picked up, Dio Speed is still saved. And, oh, that's really nice. Wobbuffet is criminally underused in DPP Ubers. But it's about to show you just why it's so nasty. So he got the spikes with the Dio Speed. And rather than going for all 3 layers, he decided, you know what, I don't need all 3. I'm going to save this for fodder later. I mean, he could have gone for the 2nd layer and probably been just as well off, if not a little better. But, you know, the thought is good. So we went to Quillfish, picked up the T-Spikes, and then went to Wob, and now it's gonna Encore. So actually, can't even. It's so it can. It keeps EQing and not paybacking. So, and now EQ is gonna get countered, and Bronzong is gonna get removed, and he's got the hazards, and he's got he just removed the Giratina O threat. So next time Giratina O comes in on Tentacruel, then another KO, very likely. So, and that seems to be happening now, as Soulwind really makes use of Wobbuffet beautifully here as he stays in an Encores. Instead of going right for Giratina, then he makes a great move and decides, you know what, hazards are not the end-all be-all, and it's at this point that he's really happy that he kept his Deoxys healthy, so we can potentially not necessarily have to sack it to hazards. He can still get up rocks later. But he's like, you know what, if Tentacruel's going to come in and it tries to Icy Wind my Giratina switch, I'm going to stay in and Mirror Coat it. If it spins, whatever. If it Hydro Pumps, fine. That's a free Kyogre. Either way, Wob is going to claim another KO. And it's going to get, even though it's countering Rapid Spin, yeah, that's what's happening. Wobbuffet is countering this Tentacruel to death by countering its Rapid Spin. And Encore has a lot of that's a lengthy duration in DPP, so it's really abusable, and that's why a Wob is so dangerous. You can't really ride out the Encore. So there's yeah, and it's getting back a lot of HP, so it's going to be tough to bring down afterwards. So yeah, he's just countering it down, and still going. And there the Encore finally ends. And he's gonna... Yeah, he decides, you know what, I'm not gonna Mirror Coat into T-Spikes. He's gonna Mirror Coat again. And he's gonna save... Oh, nice. Yeah, a lot of Wobs have eschewed. That's one of those words I've only ever read and not really heard. He says, I'm not going to use Destiny Bond like a lot of Wobs have gone in favor of, and he still has Safeguard, so he doesn't even need Quillfish to pick up the T-Spikes. He can just send Kyogre directly into it, and that's just beautiful. So Kyogre comes in with Safeguard up, not minding the T-Spikes, and gets a free Calm Mind, and, you know, we don't see a Ludicolo like we might have some years ago, as awesome as that would have been. Ludicolo would have been really good here. And instead comes Lugia, which is not a Kyogre answer. It can try to Calm Mind work Kyogre, not effectively though. I mean, Calm Mind Whirlwind does okay if you phase it out really quickly, but Thunder Para is gonna really ruin your life, and it doesn't even come to that. It just gets crit. So that was lucky, but I mean, Lugia is not meant to be warring Kyogre with Calm Mind. So now Tentacruel comes into Icy Wind, and you know Tentacruel doesn't run Toxic or anything, so this is just free Calm Minds for Ogre. So you better really be taking advantage of the speed drop, because Ogre decides not to get greedy and just attacks. You know, who knows what might happen. But in comes Dialga, and oh, it's okay. Yeah, it's sub Dialga, and sub bulk up Dialga is something that's become really popular recently. Sub bulk up, either Protect with T spikes or Roar with regular spikes. I mean, you can mix and match, of course. But it's a really, really nasty set, and he needed to make sure it was slower, the Kyogre was slower, so he could try and stall it with pressure. But if it's Calm Mind, Surf, and Ice Beam, then Dialga cannot PP stall this effectively enough. So Kyogre just rolling on through. And the Safeguard Wob and the T-Spike Squill, and a great Calm Mind on Protect there to really seal the deal. But yeah, the T-Spike's absorbing Quillfish, also potentially T-Spike setting Quillfish. It can definitely work that into its moveset if you feel like. And the Safeguard Wob really combined to bring the best out in Kyogre. You know, it's threatening even without hazards on the field. Of course, yeah, most of its checks are, like Latios and Latias are Spikes immune, of course, but, you know, really likes Spikes sticking into Palkia and Dialga, but here it doesn't even matter. And there's Blissey, and even Blissey can't handle several times boosted Kyogre, and he couldn't go to Blissey before because of Safeguard, so he just got those multiple boosts, and by that time the Blissey just couldn't handle it anymore, and Giratina O's not going to be able to... I mean, a crit there could have maybe, but it's unlikely, because Soulwind needs a range, what's it called? He needs some sort of Kyogre check last. I would say it's probably Dialga, so he doesn't, you know, instantly crumple the Draco Meteor as hard. Although Wobbuffet, of course, removes most Draco Meteor users nicely after they've KO'd something, ideally Deoxys Speed. But yeah, and Scarf Dialga for more fast cleanup there is great. But yeah, so it's unlikely that even if the Giratina Origin crit the EQ, that it would have won the game. So yeah, Soulwind is the winner of this one. So that is going to be the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really hope you enjoyed it. I really love this tier, as you could probably tell, and I hope you got some. I hope you were able to partake in some DPP Ubers joy as well. I will be making a lot more DPP Ubers videos just because I love this tier so much. So thank you guys, and I will catch you next time.